My name's Darrryn Smart. I'm the Group Leader Communications Electronic Warfare within the Defence Science and Technology Group. I've been the Science and Technology Lead for the Red Wing program, which together with the Australian Military Sales Office and the Joint Counter-Improvised Threat Task Force, we've developed the Red Wing program, which has been unique specialised devices that provide force protection against the improvised explosive devices, which we've sold over 160,000 of these units to the Afghanistan Special Forces and Security Forces. The ADF, the main troops, were pulling out of Afghanistan. We were leaving behind the Afghan security forces, and we realised while we had the protection against these devices, we were leaving them behind unprotected against those. It really became from the people within the ranks over there, the troops, starting to pull out. They were recognising this issue on there. But to be fair, it was really then pushed by the higher level, hearing that information, then pushing it down to people like us. We've had the long expertise in this area. And the other part to that really was that we knew we had the expertise whether this was feasible from the front by talking to the guys in the field. Two main barriers we saw. One was the risk-averse nature of some of the higher management levels against anything new or sort of different out of the ordinary. And this resulted, we needed a lot of education really to understand, to meet that. One of the critical things with the Red Wing program was a critical delivery time. We had to deliver these items to the Afghans who were ready for their fighting season, which meant hard deadlines. And unfortunately, those processes weren't there in place to support it. If we'd followed the standard processes for transferring our sort of medium readiness level technology into a finished product, would have taken a year or two. We needed 6 months to do this, so we had to develop whole new processes to be able to achieve that. The resultant devices were the first of their kind in the world, but really to push this through the system we needed a sort of a champion at a high level within the Defence Department that really understood the importance of this capability. Without that we wouldn't have achieved the innovation within the time that we had required for it. It really was a combined effort from all levels. These devices are saving lives, and so people understood the goal. This is important, and that made it a bit somewhat easier to push through get through those old cobwebs to get those new processes in place. Being a science and technology organisation to start with, we have that background innovation as part of our role. However, our high-level management, our Chief Defence Scientists in the past years really pushed the innovation strategy. In fact, we had a whole day right across DST Group earlier this year totally dedicated to innovation ideas. Innovation, I think, it has been very much, it has to come from within, the person within running on here. And whilst the culture has sort of said the words innovation, what I've found really, you really need to have buy-in from the people involved to really take that on. At the high level push down, that helps. But you really need to understand why and what you're doing that innovation for to really take that on. A previous chief here at DST Group, and he said if we're not failing at least 10–20% of the time, we're not doing our job properly. So within an S&T organisation, that's, in theory, that's understood. In practice though, it is still difficult to move across here. And in time of reduced resources, any evidence of failure is still looked on, as say, from the people working in that field on there saying, I haven't done well enough. So it's easy to say that, it's harder in practice to implement that. But having said that, I believe DST Group is probably better than most at accepting some level of failure. Resilience is so important from that, especially with the reduced resources we're having now. We're having all these external pressures and issues anyway, and then you're trying to push forward a new way of doing something, for example, as an extra challenge. So you really need to have that strength of the character, the resilience of the people to be able to push that through. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Both for the innovation, what the innovation is about, but equally importantly about what the need for it. What's the outcome of that innovation? If we pull this off, what does this mean? What capability do we improve? What process we make more efficient? So communication at all times, that's my big push.